We're going to take our character, which should look, something like this, and we're going to do some more advanced coloring to bring it like this. Okay, so what we're looking at is we're going to apply some gradients here to come up with more, to create more depth really. We can see some shapes here for the cheeks, some highlight shapes. You can notice the face shape, how there's this, the gradient, it starts off bright in the center, and as it gets farther away, it gets a little darker tone. We'll apply the same effect to the neck, and then we'll do something a little different with the hair to give it some texture. And so those are the things we're going to be looking at. First thing we're going to start with is the face shape. So we're going to select that, and we can go to our fill color and just click it, and we're going to select the black to white gradient, and we can access our gradient options just by clicking this button here, and it opens up the gradient panel. So we're going to change this to a radial gradient, and we're going to select this right slider here and just change it to your color picker. And I'm going to come over to the face, and this is going to be the outside color. So I'm going to pick a darker pink tone for mine. For you it might be a little bit different, but you want this to be your darker color. And then we're going to select the other color, and with our eyedropper just pick a lighter skin tone. Alright, so that should give us our face shape. You can play around with the diamond up here to adjust how much of the light color is in there, and just kind of like how it all blends in. So do whatever you think kind of looks best. I'm going to go with around 65%. And that's all we need to do for the face for that coloring. So you can see how that turned out. I'm actually going to go back into my fill color, and if we take this and drag it down, it'll save that gradient. So we can come to our neck and just apply the same gradient. We're going to look at the cheeks now, so I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm going to change that to maybe a lightish pink color. You might want to change this later after you kind of see what it does. But that's just a starting point. Then we're going to use an effect to blur the edges of this. So we're going to go to Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And I'm going to use a radius of 25. So this is going to kind of feather the edges and allow it to blend in to what's behind it. So I think I want to pick a different color here. Yeah, maybe resize that. And the other thing that we can do with this is play around with the opacity of this. So you can try different opacity levels. Kind of depends on your color that you picked. But again, we still want it to look natural and just kind of subtle. So I went with an opacity of 40%. Yours could be very different. All right, so once we have that, I'm going to just make a copy of it and bring it to the other side. We're going to put a little highlight here. So I'm going to make a oval, and I'm going to fill this with white. And I'm also going to blur this. Now, since we already applied a blur, there's a quick shortcut here. We can just go to Effect, and it saves our last effect that we've used. So we can just click on that, and it applies our white blur. So I'm going to just make a copy of this and bring it over. if you want to make a change to a blur, or any effect for that matter, all right, you would not go back to the effect menu and reapply it. That's a great way to crash your computer. What you would do instead, right underneath your fill, your stroke, and opacity, you see the blur menu or the effect. You can just click on it and make any adjustments that you need to here. So just a little something in case you're trying to make that change, just something for you to be aware of. All right, we're also going to make a little highlight by the jaw here. So I'm going to just switch over to my pen tool, and I'm essentially just going to kind of trace over the jaw again. We want to make a crescent shape here. So any way that you know how to do that. Again, this is just kind of a subtle detail. If it's not exactly perfect, that's totally fine. We're going to keep this filled with white. Well, you know what? I think we're going to give this the face color here. Just give it a little color. All right, from there we're going to do a blur. We're going to apply the same blur and might lower the opacity. Okay, so we just made this crescent shape. We filled it with the main skin tone color. I blurred it, but I did leave the opacity at 100%. Again, for you it might be a little bit different. And you can see this side compared to that side that does not have it yet. Just kind of highlights the jaw a little bit. So I'm just going to take this, make a copy of it, and right click, transform, reflect. And from here we can just kind of line it up and make any adjustments that you need to just to kind of get it situated on the jaw. All right, so now that we have kind of our colors and shape here, again, design is an iterative process, meaning it's a lot of back and forth. So I'm not a big fan of how dark this outside of the face shape is. So I'm just going to go back into my gradient panel here, and I'm going to pick a little bit lighter of a color. Nope, too light. That looks a lot more natural to me. So again, maybe you nailed it the first time. Maybe you want to make that little change. But for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, last thing that we have to do here is going to be the hair. So this is going to be very new to us. We've talked about parts of this, but we're just going to be putting it all together. So we're going to give it some texture, which is going to require us to use a gradient. It's also going to require us to use an effect and do something new. So I'm going to just select this first hair piece and make a copy of it. We're going to just bring it off to the side. You want to fill this with a darker color. So I've already pre-selected a color that I know will look good for mine. And once you kind of see the end result here, you'll be able to come back and change this. So there's a couple steps to this process. The first one, make a copy of the shape, change the color of it. Next thing we're going to do is take our rectangle tool and just put a big rectangle on top of it. And we're going to give this a fill color. We're going to select any gradient for right now. And open up your gradient options. And for this specific hair piece, I'm going to start off with a radial gradient. We'll see how that ends up working out. And now we're going to apply a grain effect to it. So we're going to go to the Effect menu. We're going to go down to Texture and Grain. And if you zoom out, you'll see what it's going to do. Okay, we can accept all these default settings. We're going to click OK. And it gives us this result. All right, now keep in mind there's still that shape back there. All right, so we're going to select both of those. And we want to open up a new panel. If you go to the Window menu and scroll down, you're going to see this Transparency panel. We want to open that up. And so there's two shapes again, one stacked on top of the other. We're going to click Make a Mask, and you're going to see what it does here. Alright, so this grain texture can only be visible inside of this shape. So we can take this shape now and move it back on top of where it was. And that's how we can get texture. Now if we want to edit this gradient, which once you get it on place, you probably want to do that, we can select in the Transparency panel, see how it has this blue frame around it? That means the gradient is now selected. So we can go back to our gradient panel. I want to kind of flip this, so this is the flip gradient button. So that way it's darker on the edges and lighter on the inside. And you can kind of tweak that and get it to where you think it looks good. So you're going to do that for all the hair components, and really any time you want to add texture to something. The thing to remember in our Transparency panel, when you're done editing the gradient, you need to select back to the shape layer, and then you can have control over like normal. Okay, if you have this still selected, you won't be able to select anything else. You'll be wondering what's going on. Nothing seems to work. It's because this is still selected. You just need to go back to this shape layer. All right, so I'll walk you through the process again. You're going to select the shape, make a copy of it, change the color. We're going to put a box around it. We're going to fill that with a gradient. Again, this one I might try a linear gradient. We'll see how that works. We're going to apply the grain effect. Select both. Go to our Transparency panel. Make a mask. Move it back on. And if you need to adjust this gradient at all, you select it, go to your gradient options, and do anything that you feel like you need to do. I think this actually turned out pretty good. And then when you're done editing that, just make sure you click back here. Alright, so I'm going to have you do the rest of the hair pieces on your own. The process is the same. If you need to hear it repeated, just rewind the video and go back and look at it. But what I'm looking for when I grade this, okay, I'm looking for your application of gradients. I'm looking that you at least attempted to put a texture in there. And those are kind of the two big things. I'm also going to be looking at your shapes from part one and see how well you did the face shapes, the eyes, how well you're using the pen tool, and just the level of effort and detail that you're putting into it. All right, if you have any questions, let me know.